Το όνομα Κυρίου ευλογημένον από του νυν και έως του αιώνος. Blessed be the name of the Lord from this time forth and unto the ages. Το όνομα Κυρίου ευλογημένον από του νυν και έως του αιώνος.
Good morning, Kalimera σας, and a blessed feast day of St. Gregory the Theologian to all of you. St. Gregory is one of three to hold the epithet theologians, St. John, who wrote the Gospel, and the other one is St. Simeon, the new theologian. And so this title is quite rare, and he was a rare breed of theologian and pastor, and this is also why this coming Sunday we're going to commemorate him along with St. John Chrysostom and St. Basil as one of the three great hierarchs. He was born in 329 in Arianzus, not far from Nazianzus, and his father was the Saint Gregory of Nazianzus, so sometimes we confuse the two, but it was his father that was the Saint Gregory of Nazianzus. He was sent to study in a number of different places, so Caesarea of Palestine, and then he was sent to Alexandria, which is in Egypt, and then he finally went to the academy in Athens, at which place he met St. Basil the Great and Prince Julian, who later became the Emperor Julian the Apostate. And in Athens is when his friendship, his deep friendship with St. Basil the Great actually flourished. They became lifelong friends. In the latter part of his life, or again when he was of mature age and afterward, he was ordained by his own father to the presbyterate, to the priesthood, and he served in that diocese of Nazianzus, and then he was consecrated by St. Basil actually to be the bishop of Sassima or Zanzima in Caesarea, which was a point of sorrow between the two of them actually, because most of the saints that write about being ordained write about resisting ordination, especially to the episcopacy, especially to being a bishop. And so this was the subject of one of his famous orations, his second oration about his flight to Pondus, where as soon as he was ordained a bishop, he ran away for several months. And it was upon his return that he gave this oration explaining why he ran away from the heavy burden and the awesome responsibility of the archpriesthood. The love between them, however, still remained, even though they were strained, and he was the one who spoke at St. Basil's funeral. Another famous writing of his, or a homily of his, the funeral oration on St. Basil, came out of this part of his life. Perhaps what he is most famously known for in history is in 379, so he was 50 years old, he came to the assistance of the Church of Constantinople, which was still troubled by Arians, even though several decades earlier, the First Ecumenical Council closed the book on Arianism. Well, there were still, bits and pieces, and it was trying to sneak back here and there the heresy of Arianism, which, as we know, is Arius believed that Christ was a created being, not the Son of God, co-equal, co-eternal, of the same essence. That's why we have that line in the Creed of one essence with the Father. That creed was already established, and yet the Arians were still kind of trying to poke and prod. And he came there in 379, and he, in his labor and his preaching, especially in the city, within 3 years, there were no more churches at all possessed by Arians. He wasn't even the Archbishop of Constantinople at the time. He was, because of his extraordinary help in freeing the city from heresy, he was elected the Archbishop of Constantinople at the Second Ecumenical Council, and then shortly afterward, at 382, when he left, there were no more churches possessed by the Arians. Because of the difficult and bitter nature of this fight, he was a gentle soul, he resigned from the archbishopric and now patriarchate of Constantinople, and he returned to Nazianzus to retire in solitude. And then 9 years later, he reposed at the age of 62, in the year 391. He is known especially as the Trinitarian Theologian, since he refers to the Trinity in virtually every homily. Another one of his famous series of homilies were called the Triadic Homilies, and while they were geared towards chasing out the Arians, they also made special mention of the Trinity, particularly because at the time there weren't just Arians troubling the empire. There were also what were called the pneumatomachians, those who fought against the Spirit, who denigrated the Spirit's divinity also. So in one fell swoop, he preached the true doctrine of the Trinity, and it was through his and St. Basil's efforts, remember they were contemporaries at the time, that we have the doctrine of the Spirit that we do today. So how do we apply this life of this illustrious luminary, this hierarch of hierarchs, to ourselves? As we recall, back in the beginning of his journey, he ran away from his calling. When we are listening for the voice of God in our lives, frequently it's murky. It's not clear exactly what it is that we think he's supposed to do. And the pattern that the saints give to us, well, there are multiple patterns, but usually when it's not clear, St. Gregory the Theologian, St. John Chrysostom, and others ran away from ordination or avoided it, pushed it away as far as possible, even though they knew it was a good thing, but because of the frightful responsibility and because you really need to be sure. And the principle here is that if God wants you to know something, to do something, to be someone, he will continue knocking on that same door with more and more insistence until it is absolutely clear to you. In the meantime, if it's unclear, we live our spiritual lives, brothers and sisters, with those 3 pillars of the spiritual life: prayer, fasting, almsgiving, in preparation for the time when the Lord's call becomes abundantly clear, and then we can act. Amen.